So I was talking to this guy who was already giving me weird vibes. Just a little strange, but nothing unbearable, right? So he asked me on a date to the zoo, which I love, so we decided to go. So from the beginning, we meet up at the zoo and walk up together. We're at the front, waiting in line for them to scan our tickets, when he points to a sign that says, "Private property, no weapons permitted." I ask him if he has a gun with him, and he says, "No, but I am the weapon." I roll my eyes, because how cringy, all caps by the way. Then we get inside, start walking around, and we get to these animals called klipspringers. They're just these cute little brown things with little legs. He proceeds to say, "They are short and stubby just like you." I literally just looked up, stared at him, and said, "Are you joking?" But I still stayed on the date. I mainly stayed because I loved the zoo, and the entry fee was $35. Huge mistake. All caps again. So then we continue walking around, and after certain things happen, he says, "Trapaholics." Whatever the hell that means. If anyone knows, I'd love to know what it means, LOL. Then, it's a Saturday, so all the families are at the zoo, and the children are everywhere. And he looks over at me, sighs, and says, "Oh, I'm getting baby fever." I just kept looking straight, because who says that on a first date? The rest of the date goes kinda okay. We're leaving the zoo, and he mentions his ex. I don't say anything, because again, what the hell? Well then, the next set of events all happens within the 5 to 6 minute walk to the car. He mentions her again, and says if I saw my ex again, it would all be over with. Like what? Again? This is a first date. All caps once again. Then he says he was born at 19 years old. I asked him what the hell that means. He says, "I was just born a lot older than I was. I was walking at 7 months old, and I'm just super intelligent." So I roll my eyes and ask him if he's so intelligent, why isn't he at Harvard or something instead of working his very basic, very easy job? And he says it's because of family stuff. Finally, he tells me that he keeps having dreams of World War II and might have been in World War II in his past life. At this point, I was just so over and ready to get in my car and leave. TLDR, I went on a date with a weird guy, and he mentioned his ex, insulted me, and said he keeps having dreams of World War II. Now this is just an absolutely insane fabricated story, cause why would bro insult his date on the first date, say trapaholics out of nowhere, and also say, "Ugh, I have baby fever." Whatever, man. Let's get into the next one. So the next story from this wonderful subreddit. I'm pretty sure English is not this person's first language, as it is also written really badly, but let's get into it. TIFU, my embarrassing moment, crying face emoji. I, 28 female, and I embarrassed myself badly at work last week. My HR sent an anonymous feedback form for everyone to share honest thoughts about the office. I thought it was actually anonymous, so I wrote things like, "Some meetings could have been emails and should not cross more than an hour. Whoever keeps heating fish in the office microwave, please stop." And my favorite, "My manager says quick call like it's a warning, not an invitation." I submitted it and felt proud of myself. The next day, HR printed all the feedback with everyone's name on it. My manager read mine, looked at me, and said, "Quick call?" Everyone laughed. My soul left my body, and I now avoid eye contact, the office kitchen, and honestly, my entire job. Now this one is a bit more believable than the last one. I could totally believe that management would send out an anonymous survey, and it's not actually anonymous, and your name is still attached to it, but why would they print them out, read them in front of everybody, and also call you out at the meeting? That's the part I don't understand. But again, totally could have happened, but I'm leaning more towards fake story. Now we got our next story here that is tied with the first one for most unbelievable. So here goes. TIFU by pretending to recognize someone who waved at me, and now I'm going to their wedding. This happened about 6 months ago, but it's reaching its final form next Wednesday. I was walking through town, and some guy waved at me from across the street. I didn't recognize him at all, but I panicked and waved back. He crossed the road and came up to me like we were old friends, called me mate, asked how I've been, the whole thing. I just went with it, nodded, laughed at his jokes, said, "Yeah, mad, isn't it?" about 15 times. Then he said we should go grab a pint sometime. I said, "Yeah, definitely." I actually followed through. We went for a pint, then another one the week after. We've been meeting up almost every week since. He introduced me to his girlfriend, I've been to his house for dinner. I still have absolutely no idea who this man is or how he thinks he knows me. I've tried everything to figure it out without asking. Checked his Facebook, asked sneaky questions, nothing. 3 weeks ago he asked me to come to his wedding. I said, "Of course, mate, wouldn't miss it." I'm now choosing what to wear to a stranger's wedding, and I will take this to my grave, because there is no going back from 6 months of friendship. TLDR, waved back at a stranger out of panic, was too awkward to admit I didn't know him. We've been friends for 6 months, and now I'm going to his wedding next Wednesday. Now, I didn't really believe this one the first time I read it, because, I imagine when they went out for a pint, the other guy was probably, trying to bring up some memories, so he would, confirm, "Yeah, I did know you way back when," but, upon reading it a second time, it's kind of maybe this guy is really lonely, and he didn't have any friends for his wedding, so he just decided to invite this random stranger. Which is cool, but anyways, let's get into the next one. Now, this next story is pretty insane. It kind of encapsulates, everything I hate about this subreddit, and Reddit in general, really. So, here it goes. TIFU by matching with my homophobic uncle on Grindr. So I have an uncle, we will call him Jay, who has always been very vocal about his disapproval of my sexuality. There's not a family gathering that goes by where he doesn't say something asshole-ish about homosexuality or me specifically. Well, this weekend, in between family gatherings, I was looking to meet somebody. I started chatting with an older man because that's how I roll. A lot of older guys don't like to show their faces because they aren't out, so I don't think much of it when he doesn't show me his face. We actually hit it off great, and after receiving a few pics I wish I could unsee, and sending a few I wish I could take back, we decided to meet up for, well, you know. So I'm at this coffee shop down the street waiting for my man to show up, and you know who walks in? It is at this moment I realize my FU. I've been flirting with my gay-hating, closeted uncle. He tries to play it off like a random encounter, but I wasn't letting him get away with that. After some pressing, he finally admits that he is the man I've been talking to, and I told him I don't judge him like he does me. He apologized for the hurtful things he said to me over the years. He kept talking with me like he was still interested, and I had to make it clear that was not going to happen. I had to get up and walk out of there after multiple texts from him, and I had to go ahead and block his number. I can't believe this guy had the nerve to judge me and treat me like less of a human being after all these years, when he's a total creep and massive hypocrite. Always get a face pic, people. Now, there's a nice little twist here at the end. Alright, the guy, the original poster, made an edit. Here's what it says. "This was fake. Reddit is gullible, and I hate TIFU. It's all fake stories. Get baited." Am I the asshole for telling a little girl that her parents should be disappointed in her? Starting off strong. Earlier today, I was doing some grocery shopping, and I was just finishing up to head back to pay for my items. A little girl, probably 11 or 12, and a friend that looked about the same age came up to me and asked if I would be willing to make a purchase for them. It immediately raised red flags, so I asked what type of purchase. She tried to beat around the bush for a couple of seconds, saying, "It's not actually for me, it's for my friend, but I promised her I would get it for her." I told her that I would not be making any purchase for her that she cannot make for herself, because I had a feeling that it was for alcohol. She got a little irritated with me and asked why. I told her that if she could go ask her mom, and her mom would say no. It was not my place to say yes. I made a comment about how she needed to be a bit more mindful with coming up to people that she doesn't know in this manner, and that it can be dangerous. She got incredibly angry and started cussing me out. She called me a fat cow and a dried up old bitch. I am 24, so whatever. But I went to walk away, and as I turned around, I heard her say, "She's probably a duck, too." I about lost it. I turned back around, stood right in front of her, leaned down so I was on her level, and said, "Little girl, you need to go home to your parents right now and tell them that they should be disappointed in your behavior. That is not how you speak to people." She started laughing, and her friend walked away. I feel like I'm the asshole in my response to her. I feel like I should have just ignored her and walked away, but in my mind, if I don't at least attempt to shut that behavior down when I see it, I am not doing my due diligence to society. Some people's children are never told no, and they feel comfortable saying whatever they want. I don't know why a 12-year-old has me shaken up, but is this really what kids are like now? I don't have any yet, but that scares me. What is making them like this? You can probably see why this one in particular is my favorite. The original poster let a 12-year-old get into their head and rage bait them. They were rage baited so badly by this 12-year-old that they did in fact retreat to their little safe space of Reddit and make an entire post about it, asking if they were the asshole or not. I mean, you cannot make this up. That is absolutely peak Reddit logic right there. To get insulted by a child, and it rage baits you so hard that you have to go make a Reddit post about it. You just have to go onto Reddit, get your little karma points, and have everybody in the comments tell you that, no, you are not the asshole in this situation. It really makes me think, like, these people need to have their feelings validated. Like, that's the whole point of making their post in the first place. It's so ridiculous. This next post is kind of sad, because it really puts into perspective the mind of a Reddit parent and the way they think about certain things. Am I the asshole? Got into an argument with my 16-year-old about a show they like. Am I the asshole? Hi, I'm trying to figure out if I'm in the wrong here. If so, how do I go about fixing this? I was watching a show in my living room when my 16-year-old came in and asked what I was watching. They said they had a show recommendation. While I was queuing it up, they told me that the opening 2 scenes were basically the best ever. As the show started, they talked through it, pointing stuff out they thought was cool. We got through the scenes, and they had me pause the show. They asked me my thoughts. I said I didn't really have any original thoughts to share. They asked why, and I said because I didn't really get to analyze the show and watch it for myself because they told me everything about it before I could. My kid got annoyed and left the room, going down the hallway saying, "You could have at least pretended you cared." I responded, I wanted to care. I would have. It seemed like a cool opening to a show to experience. And then they went into their room and shut the door. Am I the asshole? And now, regrettably, I do have to give credit where credit is due. The comments on this post did in fact call this person out for being a complete asshole. Their kid was trying to connect with them by, like, showing them a cool show that they like, but the parent is, like, just complete Reddit brain, hyper over-analyzing stuff. Like, you already told me about everything in the show, so I don't have any original opinions. Like, dude, shut up. Why? Like, these people, they can't form their own thoughts. They get all their thoughts and opinions from people around them or people that tell them about stuff. And here, this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's a prime example of that happening. Like, even if their kid did tell them everything about it, just make something up. Like, oh yeah, that was pretty cool. I like that. Or like, well, it was nice, but, you know, not for me. You know, something to engage with your kid on. Like they're looking to bond with you. That's why they showed you the show they liked, because they think it's cool. They think you might think it's cool too. They want you to watch it with them. Like, I truly do feel bad for any kid that has to have a Reddit parent. Now, this next one is also pretty sad because it kind of shows the lack of awareness some of these people have, the lack of hope they have as well. So here goes. Am I the asshole for calling out my brother for writing something insensitive on our Mother's Day card? My brother, 25, and I, 24, both live at home and caretake for our mother who has ALS, which is a terminal illness. Given she's had the diagnosis for about a year now, the average time frame she has left is 1 to 4 more years. We had a Mother's Day card, and I asked him to sign it. When he handed me the card to sign it, I couldn't believe what he wrote. He said, "Happy Mother's Day, hope to celebrate many more. I gave him a side eye and told him that that was really tactless to write to someone with a disease that is terminal. He responded by saying I was trying to start a fight, and that what he wrote was true. He did hope to celebrate more years with her. I told him it was going to make her cry when she read that, but he brushed it off and told me to let it go. Once she opened the card, she immediately started crying, just as I predicted it would. Since her diagnosis, all holidays have made her teary-eyed, but had already cried a few minutes before while opening gifts. I really do suspect it was the many more years part that made her tear up. So I don't know why the original poster got so mad at his brother for writing that in the card. Like, maybe he does want to spend many more Mother's Days with his mother. And even if it's a, objective fact that she won't be around for much longer, it's still a nice thing to write in the card, and it really does give those people hope, despite whatever illness they have. Like, it gives them the hope to fight back against it, and not just lie there accepting death and waiting to succumb to the illness. I don't know. This was just a bad situation all around. Emotions are probably very tense at that point in time. I don't know. What do you guys think? Now, this next one made me pretty mad, and it'll probably make you mad as well. It really shows how little these people care for their families, how little they cherish their families. Am I the asshole for telling my mom I don't see a need to cherish my brother? My brother, 12M, had just spoiled the ending to his show. I have told him nicely before not to do so for previous shows, and he has never been successful at not spoiling. I just told him about this the previous day. I got extremely angry, and I scolded him on this, telling him in the future I want him to go to another room when I watch a show he knows the ending for. My mom pulled me aside and told me I need to watch my words and that he was hurt, that he simply lacked self-control and he wasn't doing it on purpose. Overall, I agreed with her and admitted I shouldn't have gotten so angry, although I still don't know how else I'm supposed to handle this, considering talking nicely doesn't work, until the end where she said, "You only have one brother in this world, cherish him." That part I didn't agree with. I told her bluntly I didn't see why I should cherish my brother if he constantly causes me harm in my life. She got extremely pissed and kept saying family wasn't about that. Now, there was a lot more to this post, but it was literally just a poster talking about how their mom lectured them about her childhood, so it's not really pertinent to the subject. Now, keep in mind, the brother is 12 years old, and all he's doing is spoiling, movies or TV shows. Yeah, that's annoying, but the poster is calling their brother a net negative in their life. They're referring to their 12-year-old brother as a net negative in their life for spoiling shows. You can't make this up. And there's tons of people in the comments agreeing with this person. There are only 1, 2, maybe 3 comments disagreeing with them, calling them the asshole in this situation. And this is why I hate these people. I hate Reddit. It turns these people into unfeeling robots, near sociopathic. We're starting off pretty strong with pooped on Trump's golf course. So about 4 months ago, I got COVID. I was visiting my boyfriend's family the following weekend and thankfully recovered in time. My stomach, however, had not fully recovered. I always have gastrointestinal problems after having COVID. Anyway, we went out to lunch. Me, my boyfriend, his mom, and his grandpa. I regrettably ordered a really greasy burger. Well, after finishing up, we all got back in the car and headed home. That's when the belly gurgles started. I was struck by the intense need to diarrhea, but we were on the main highway with no upcoming exits. My boyfriend's mom was driving, and I requested that we pull over somewhere because I really couldn't hold it. We pulled over to the side of the road in front of some shrubs, and I swiftly ran into the bushes for cover. My boyfriend and his mom waited in the car while I squatted behind some bushes and let it out. Come to find out, we had pulled over at the golf course entrance. From afar, we noticed a golf cart security officer start to approach us. My boyfriend gave me his socks right off his feet to wipe with since there was no toilet paper. He and his mom ushered me back into the car before the officer caught me. As we pulled away, we all realized it was the entrance to the Trump International Golf Course. So basically, I pooped on Trump's course. You see, I told you guys we were starting off strong. Now, I don't care if the story's fake or where you lie politically. You can't deny that that shit is funny, alright? Just imagine that, alright? You're there, squatting down, having an emergency bowel movement. And while you're just trying to get it done and over with, you look over and a rent-a-cop is there, trying to run you down. And there are a fair bit of comments on this post saying "True Patriot, thank you for your service," and that would be really funny if it wasn't Redditors saying it. And shout out to the boyfriend who took the socks off his feet for her to wipe with. I probably wouldn't have been able to do that. And also, what do you think they did with the socks? They just leave them there on the side of the road, or did they take the socks with them? I don't really even want to think about that, so let's move on to the next one. This next one's pretty evil. I stole my neighbor's cat 6 months ago, and I watch him look for it every single day. I live in a shitty apartment complex where the walls are basically made of paper, and my neighbor was this guy who probably shouldn't even have been allowed to own a houseplant, let alone a living creature. He had this small black cat that he would just leave out on the balcony for hours regardless of the weather. I could hear the poor thing crying through the vents while he was inside blasting music or shouting at his Xbox. One night it started pouring rain and the temperature dropped hard, and I saw the cat shivering on the railing, looking miserable as hell. I just reached over from my balcony, grabbed the cat, and brought it inside. I didn't even think about it, I just reacted. The next morning, I heard him shouting in the hallway asking everyone if they had seen his pet. I just stood there with the door cracked open and told him I hadn't seen a thing, and maybe the cat finally jumped off because it was fed up with his shit. He spent weeks putting up posters and walking around the block calling its name while the cat was literally sleeping on my bed 10 feet away from him. It has been 6 months now, and he still brings it up whenever we cross paths in the laundry room. He looks genuinely devastated sometimes, which would make me feel bad if I hadn't seen him ignore the cat's bowls for days at a time back then. The cat is doing great now, by the way. I renamed him, and he is healthy as hell. He actually gets fed decent food and doesn't have to freeze his tail off outside. I have to be extremely careful, though. I never let him near the windows when the blinds are up, and I have a specific routine for when I take out the trash, so he doesn't accidentally dart into the hallway. It is a stressful way to live, but seeing the cat actually purring instead of screaming makes it worth the paranoia. My friends think I just adopted him from a shelter in the next town over, and I am never telling them the truth. Sometimes I see my neighbor at the local bar looking through old photos on his phone, and I just sit there drinking my beer and saying nothing. I know it is technically theft, and I am a liar, but some people just don't deserve the loyalty of an animal. He probably thinks a coyote got it, or someone picked it up off the street, which is technically true, I guess. I just happen to be the someone. The cat seems to prefer my taste in movies anyway, so we're sticking to the plan. I will probably move out when my lease is up, just to end the risk of him hearing him meow through the wall. Until then, I am just a helpful neighbor who offers a sympathetic nod while the evidence is napping in my living room. I kinda butchered that a little bit at the end there. Started sounding like Chills. Number 15, Burger King foot lettuce. But anyways, like I said, this story's pretty evil. Like, I get it, you're worried about the cat, but that dude seems like genuinely distraught over the loss of his cat. He's asking around, he's putting up posters, he's at the bar looking through old photos of it. I mean, maybe he's just operating under the logic of you don't know what you have until it's gone. Which in many cases can be true, but I don't know. I hope this story's fake. Let's just move on to the next one. Now this next one is probably real. I can definitely see this happening, so let's get into it. I used to pay my middle school bully not to bully me. Then I found out he actually needed the money. He made my life a living hell. He would turn all the boys in class against me and bully me about my eyebrows. One time he begged me to buy him a pizza, and he said he promises not to bully me all week if I do. So I bought him a box of pizza, and he fulfilled the promise. I loved the idea. I began to do it on a regular basis. I started asking him every Friday what he wants next week, so that the bullying doesn't happen again. He asked for 2 bags of hot fries, a potato chip flavor here in the US, and another time he wanted some milk from the cafeteria. And one time he asked for colored pencils for art class. My school had a uniform dress code. It was $25 per shirt, and the pants were $15. If I remember correctly, He showed up the first day, 8th grade, in regular clothes, a tee and jeans. So he got sent to the main office to wait for his parents. My aunt was there because she used to drop off lunch and hand me money to buy food after school. She saw him upset and asked what was wrong, and he starts crying lightly. His parents wouldn't come back because they couldn't afford the uniform and decided it would be best to avoid the situation. After, my aunt hands me my lunch. She buys him a uniform hoodie, a couple tees, and a long sleeve. He said he had pants at home, and he was hesitant to accept, but eventually took them and thanked her. Now, 13 years later, he runs a non-profit that has something to do with kids receiving books. Now, I don't know what happened with this one near the end. The guy started writing it all weird and started putting a lot of periods, so it made it really hard to read it off properly. Now, this story definitely could have happened, but, at the same time, I don't think a lot of these school bullies are going to have the foresight to put that money towards their books, their clothes, or whatever. They're probably going to use it to go buy, candy or something, So I'm a little bit torn between this one being true or fake. But if it is true, then good on him for starting up a charity. But again, this is Reddit, so you never truly know. These people will lie about literally anything just to make that number on their account go higher. We're going to finish off with a fairly short but amazing post I found on here. Today, I saved a box of kittens from a burning building. Just needed to get it off my chest. So embarrassing. Just wish I could have done more. I feel like such an asshole. This is how you all sound on this stupid sub. It's always good finding like-minded people like this. I truly cannot express on here how much I despise Reddit and Redditors. They make up these stupid fake little stories, and they have all these people in the comments clapping like seals. It's just one big circle jerk. And when I was looking through the r/antinatalism and r/nihilism subreddits earlier, it really just cemented my opinions. Those people hate themselves, and they hate everyone around them by extension. They're anti-human in its purest form. Anyways, sorry for the little rant at the end. I guess I just needed to get that r/ off my chest. I vandalized the street in front of a kid's house to insult him, and he passed away from leukemia the same week. This is still my biggest demon that haunts me 25 years later. When I was 9, I lived on the same street as another kid my age who had cancer. We used to hang out a lot, and at that age, I really didn't understand cancer yet. I just knew he was sick. Obviously, his family was super nice and accommodating to him, and got basically anything he asked for, so he always had the best toys and video games and stuff, and I was jealous of that. One time, I really wanted a skateboard he had, but never used, and I was trying to get him to trade it to me or something, but he wouldn't, and I was super frustrated, because I didn't understand why he wouldn't trade it to me, or exactly why he was so spoiled. He started missing school, so he wasn't getting off with me on the bus. One day, I was walking home by myself, and when I got to his house, I took some whiteout I had in my backpack and wrote "David sucks" on the street in front of his house. A couple days later, the school made an announcement that he passed away. I don't know if you guys ever had dried whiteout on your street, but turns out it's pretty damn permanent. I'm not sure exactly how long it stayed there because I was 9, but it was definitely at least a few weeks. To this day, once a month, I get a chill up my spine, thinking back to that moment, and what it must have been like for the family to read that every day after he had just died. I never even had the balls to apologize to his family. I moved out of my house as soon as I graduated high school, and I almost never come back. So we started off with a pretty grim story, and it's easy for an outsider to say that shouldn't weigh on him as much as it did, because he was just a kid at the time, and there was no way he could have fully understood the implications of having cancer. And there's also no way he could have known that that kid would pass away that exact same week that he decided to write that on their driveway. But you have to really step into his shoes and look at it from his perspective. I think anybody who did that themselves would probably end up regretting it for the rest of their life, just like he does. What do you guys think? If you did something like this, would you be able to forgive yourself? I'm not quite sure I'd be able to myself, but thankfully I've never been put in that position, and hopefully I never will be. On to number 2. I took about $2K from a drug dealer that overdosed. I was the first on scene as a first responder. So I'm a firefighter, and about 2 years ago we got a call to a house for an ambulance assist, but we got there first. We walked in, and there were 2 guys on the sofa passed out. We copped very fast it was a overdose, so we needed Narcan to reverse the effects of the heroin. My colleague went out to the truck to get some, and me and another guy stayed. I noticed a wallet on the table full of money. As soon as I had the chance, I put it in my trousers pocket before anybody saw it. There was $2K in it. I feel kinda bad, but we saved their life. Now these are the types of shady stories I was expecting to find on r/confession. Taking $2K from a possibly dead man's wallet is pretty wild, but at the same time, you gotta think about the heroin that he was selling. How many people do you think bought that from him that ended up in the same position that he was, except in their case, help didn't come in time? It really creates this moral dilemma of, am I stealing from a man who's overdosing, or am I stealing from a drug dealer who's potentially killed people before with his products? I still think it's a pretty shady thing to do, but it really all just depends on how you look at it. What do you guys think? Confession number 3. My friend's death changed me and made me a better person. A little over a year ago, my friend threw away his life, without warning, without signs, without goodbye, without explanation. It just happened, on a random Monday morning. We were just 2 20-year-old boys. I knew he was going through a hard time. I listened to him several times. I understood him. I tried to help as best as I could, but I never imagined what was inside him. He loved life, or so it seemed. Much more than I did, or so I thought. He was a good friend, even without him knowing how much, and it hurts me that despite everything, he never really knew me as I knew him. He never knew about my ghosts as I knew about his, although they were different, and now it's too late. Now I've learned to live with the remorse. The anger is past. Over time, I've turned this story into one about me, and it's consuming me with guilt. Since this happened, my life has completely changed. Something in me changed forever. I finally decided to face my ghosts head on and walk with them. I decided to tell my partner about my past. I told him the truth about being abused as a child and a teenager and how it affects me today and the person I am. Something I never told my friend. Maybe if he knew I was as damaged as he was, he would have thought better of it or wouldn't feel so alone. I became a different person. I believe for the better. Someone who trusts more in love and kindness. Maybe that was the person he needed back then. I feel like my friend's death made me a better person, and I feel like shit for thinking this way and for making this about me. I think about him every day. It's easy to blame yourself for things that happen to your loved ones or your friends, but you have to understand that 99% of the time, it's really not your fault. And that's why you need to talk to your friends about these kinds of things. So if something ever does happen to them, you're not really consumed by the what if I did this or what if I did that different type mentality. These kinds of thoughts still may invade your mind, but they probably won't be as strong as long as you know that you did everything you could to help. Always talk to your friends and loved ones if you're going through a rough time, because they might just be going through the same exact thing as you. And with that said, let's move on to the next story. Confession 4. One conversation with my mom changed the way I see parents forever. A few months ago, my mom sat me down and told me she needed to talk to me about something important. I genuinely thought she was going to tell me she was dying. She looked terrified, kept fidgeting with her hands, and couldn't even look me into the eyes properly. I remember my heart pounding so hard I could barely hear what she was saying. Then she finally admitted that we were behind on bills, and she didn't know how much longer she could keep pretending everything was okay financially. What destroyed me wasn't even the money part. It was realizing that while I'd been stressing about my own life, my mom had apparently been carrying the weight of the entire family by herself and smiling through it every single day so we wouldn't worry. Ever since that conversation, I noticed exhaustion in parents everywhere. The fake smiles, the pretending, the I'm fine when they clearly aren't. I think becoming an adult is realizing your parents were just scared people trying their best the whole time. I think this story was an important one to share, because to me personally, the most important thing you can do in life is be a parent. You're not just raising your child, you're raising the next generation. You're actively molding and shaping the future as you raise your child. And that's why it's important to raise them right. You want them to go and create the future that you wanted to see when you were a kid. I don't think parents really get enough credit in this day and age. I see a lot of people get looked down upon whenever they have their first kid. I'll see people saying, "Oh, your life is over, whatever dream you had is over," and in some cases, that might be true. But the difference between those people and the ones with kids is the ones with kids are playing an active role in creating the future. And I'll end off this segment by saying be respectful to your parents. You might have a lot on your plate, but your parents do too. Moving on to story number 5. I lost $500,000 gambling on Baccarat in about 10 minutes. Here's the gist. I started playing with $1,000 in December of last year online. I was watching a gambling influencer on YouTube and learned to play blackjack and Baccarat. I started winning a lot of money. First it was about $20,000 from blackjack. That made me want to play for more since the bet limit on blackjack was $5,000. So I switched to Baccarat and ended up with about $500,000. I then decided I want $1 million, so I started playing in the high roller rooms, playing Baccarat for $50,000 a hand. I lost 10 times in a row. Now, I don't really have much to say about this one, except just don't gamble. Me and some buddies went to Oklahoma for a wedding a couple of years ago, and we ended up going to the casino there. I pulled out $200 from the ATM, and I lost about $80, and then I just gave up and left. So moral of the story, don't gamble, the house always wins. Moving along to story number 6. This started as a curiosity and ended very badly. I should never have done it. About 8 months ago I found a USB stick lying in a coffee shop. I thought I would have homework or normal things, but when I plugged it into my laptop, I saw folders of personal videos, private photos, and documents from someone who clearly never thought anyone else would see that. My idea was to try to find the owner and return it, but I ended up seeing everything, hours and hours. There were family videos, recorded fights, crying voice notes, even a folder where that person talked about wanting to disappear and start another life from scratch. I can't explain why I became so obsessed. I felt like I was seeing the real version of someone, without filters, as if I were reading the most intimate diary in the world. I got to the point of taking the USB to work and looking at it during my breaks. The worst came later. I found the owner's profile through some documents and discovered that he apparently died a few months ago in an accident. Since then, I haven't been able to delete anything. Sometimes I open the videos only to hear the voice of the person who literally no longer exists. I know this sounds sick, but I feel this weird connection with someone I've never met, and it makes me feel guilty thinking I'm probably the only person watching all of this right now. Now this one's a little weird to me. I think the poster has a very odd obsession with this USB stick and the contents of it. And I think since they figured out who it belongs to, they should probably give it to a family member of that person or a friend. But again, those are just my thoughts on the matter, so let's get into the next one. I pretended to be my sister and destroyed her life. When I was 19, I did something so petty and gross to my sister that I have never told anyone, and every time I see her now, I feel physically sick. We were living with our mom in a tiny apartment, and my sister was the one who always seemed to have her life together. Stable job, long-term boyfriend, always looked put together. I was the mess, late to everything, dropping classes, constantly being compared to her. Then her boyfriend cheated on her. She came home crying, and I acted supportive. But honestly, part of me felt this ugly sense of relief that something in her life had finally gone bad too. A couple days later, while she was in the shower, I took her phone and texted him pretending to be her. I said she was going to expose him to everyone. I made it way harsher than she probably ever would have wanted, because I wanted him scared. It escalated fast. He started blowing up her phone, then came to our apartment yelling. My sister kept saying she didn't send it, but nobody really believed her because it came from her phone. I said nothing. Then he posted screenshots online. People from her work saw them, and within a week, she lost her job over it. She moved out soon after and never really came back emotionally. Now I only see her on holidays, and she's polite but distant. She still doesn't know it was me. I keep telling myself I was young and bitter, which was true, but I still did it on purpose. I was jealous, and I helped ruin her life over one nasty text. Now I know it can be hard to be compared to your siblings and other people in general, but what the poster did in this situation was just completely uncalled for. Her sister ended up losing her job and got her reputation ruined all over the poster's jealousy. I would have said this is not a way to resolve a family dispute, but this just seems like one-sided hate coming from the poster directed towards their sister. And the sister almost definitely knows it was the poster who sent those texts. She's just not spiteful enough to use it against her like the poster is. I know you're watching me. I have to give some context to start this off. I live in a complex. My unit is technically conjoined, same building but split in half, if that makes sense. So all our yards are side by side, and the garden beds in all of the backyards are roughly 2 feet taller than ground level. I, 22 female, live with 2 other people and my dog. I know there's a person that watches me from my garden at night when I'm outside and inside. I can hear them sometimes, and I've seen them move before. It started around 6 months ago, and I think they might be getting braver. The first instance I remember, I was taking my dog outside at night to do his business, and I sat down on a hanging chair I have in my backyard, closer to the garden, watching TikToks on my phone, when I could have sworn I heard someone cough. I paused my phone, looked around, and tried to listen for any noise, but heard nothing until I was just about to press play, and I heard what sounded like someone stepping on something crunchy, leaves or sticks, I'm not quite sure, which immediately made me get the sick feeling in the bottom of my stomach, so I quickly went back inside with my dog. Little instances like this have been going on rather consistently since then. However, a couple nights ago, there was a new weird thing that happened. I was getting the creeps as per my routine lately, and I went back inside, but as soon as I closed my back door, I saw this little white light peeking out of the bushes. This immediately struck me as weird, because the street lights behind my unit glow orange, and we don't have any garden lights, so I couldn't figure it out. I saw that twice in a row, and I haven't seen it since. Maybe a camera? Recently, I saw you for the first time since you started watching me. You moved when you thought I wasn't looking, and accidentally moved partially into the soft lighting. I know you're watching me as I type this from the safety of my lounge room. I know because I just saw you again, and you're getting closer. So to the person watching from my garden, please go away, and let's not meet ever. Update. Went out again tonight with my dog, and as I was sitting out there, I heard what sounded like someone making a popping noise with their mouth, and it scared me so bad I ran inside. Maybe I'm just paranoid, but I don't know. Small update. As of today, I haven't had any sightings since uploading this. Maybe they saw this post? I have no idea. But hopefully, this is the end of this. Well, the first story of the day is in the books, and you can consider my spine sufficiently tingled. Now the comments did offer up some good suggestions for the poster, such as calling the police, getting some floodlights, or getting a security camera, all of which I agreed to, especially if this was happening regularly and on multiple occasions. And from the original poster's last update, it seems like it stopped happening, but it would probably still be a good idea to do all the things that the comments mentioned just in case it starts happening again. Moving on to our second story of the day. Someone followed me on my walk. I, mid-20s, sometimes go on walks around my neighborhood before bed. After long days on the screen, I found a quick stroll around the block can do wonders for sleep quality. My neighborhood is generally quite safe, and I do this walk at least once a week when in town. Tonight, I felt a little risky and had extra energy after a pretty stressful day. Because of this, I decided to walk around a park nearby. The route is a simple, circular loop around the park. I have done it numerous times for nearly 5 years with nothing of note ever happening prior to tonight. The area is not well lit at all, and I'm usually the only person walking around the loop at this hour, usually between 11 p.m. and midnight. At first, everything was pretty normal. I was the only one on the road and the stars looked beautiful. However, at the halfway point, I noticed something odd. A pair of headlights crept close and began shining behind me. An electric car with no engine noise, this is important, illuminated me on my walk. It stayed at my pace for a few minutes. This made me feel incredibly uneasy. I elected to walk further from the road, hoping that the car was just stargazing and would ultimately keep driving past me. I had a really long day, and I just wanted to blow off some steam on a walk before bed. However, this car kept trailing me. It didn't change its pace from my own, and the driver flipped on his high beams as I walked further off the road to ensure I was in his field of view. He stayed behind me for another couple of minutes, until he realized I was not going to stop walking. At that point, the guy sped forward about 50 feet, like 15 meters, ahead of the nearest bend of the loop. Thinking he was out of my field of view, I noticed his car lights instantly went out. To an untrained eye or someone unfamiliar with the road, it easily would have looked like this guy just drove off. But I knew better. I would have seen his car continue down the end of the loop from my vantage point, heard it roll over the speed bumps, and would have caught it stopping at the stop sign. Instead, I didn't see or hear anything. It was as if the car faded into the night after coming to a quick, quiet stop at the darkest section of the loop. I could have sworn I heard the sound of a car door open and close, but it was not light enough to know for sure. That being said, this whole situation made me uneasy. In fact, a little uneasy was an understatement. I felt chills run down my spine. A part of me wanted to walk the whole loop, but felt walking past where this weird guy may have stopped was simply too risky. If he was, in fact, waiting in ambush, I would be toast. Instead, I listened to my gut. I chose to end my walk prematurely and cut off through a field. Off through a route to a well-lit street. After a minute of walking orthogonal to my original direction, I saw something terrifying. I caught a glimpse of a tall man in the moonlight. There are no trees in this area of the park, which is a field, walking towards me. In his hands, he held a weapon of some kind. It looked like an axe or a hammer. I couldn't tell for sure, but noticed he was moving fast. I decided to book it to the well-lit street ahead, and made it before he got close to me. From the street, I gazed at the park, and noticed the man stopped at its edge. He stared at me with a blank face, brandishing what now clearly looked like an axe in his hands. Horrified, I ran to a nearby gas station, called 911, and left as detailed a description as possible about the person and the encounter. I've never felt so scared in my life. The most terrifying aspect of this was the fact that his car was electric. No noise was made when he rapidly exited the vehicle, other than his mistake of closing the door a bit too loud. If I didn't listen to my gut, or make out the sound of a car door closing, I might not be writing this post now. So let's not meet again, random man with an axe who decided to follow me at midnight in the park. Also, if you ever feel any uncertainty or a degree of angst in a situation like my own, please listen to that inner voice. Don't doubt it. Sometimes the brain picks up on things we may not have consciously noticed. This story is a good reminder that you should always carry something that you can use as a weapon, or an actual weapon. Simple everyday activities could be turned upside down by unknown factors like the guy in this story right here. So you should always have something to protect yourself with, or at the very least, bring a friend, especially at nighttime. You truly never know who you could encounter out there. And with that being said, let's move on to number 3. The weirdest Facebook Marketplace experience I've had. Alright, so this story happened to me a couple years ago when I was around 14 years old. At the time, I wanted to make a little bit of money for myself. I figured the easiest way to do that was by selling some of my old toys on Facebook Marketplace. I had a pretty big Lego Harry Potter collection, but I wasn't really into Harry Potter anymore, so I decided to sell it. A few days after posting the ad, a buyer contacted me. I remember feeling really excited because I was about to make my first real money on my own. The buyer was a man who looked kind of old, but from his profile picture, he seemed nice enough. He told me he wanted to buy the Legos for his grandson, which honestly made the whole thing seem pretty wholesome. But as we started messaging, a few things felt off. Whenever I asked him questions about when he could pick up the Legos, he would leave me on scene and not reply. Sometimes he wouldn't answer until I sent multiple question marks. On top of that, he made a lot of grammatical mistakes. Like the kind of mistake a high schooler would make, not a fully grown adult. At the time, I thought it was weird, but I ignored it. Eventually, we agreed to meet. I don't remember exactly if it was Wednesday or Thursday, but I remember I had school the next day. He said he wanted to pick them up that night. I gave him the address of a bookstore about 10 minutes walk from my house. That way, I wouldn't have to give him my actual home address. He told me he wanted to meet at 8:30 p.m. Looking back now, that's obviously really late for a 14-year-old to meet a stranger, but at the time, I just wanted the money, so I agreed. Still, something in my gut told me not to go alone. My dad was away on a business trip at the time, so I asked my mom if she could take me. She immediately asked if I could reschedule the meeting with the man. I told her it would be fine, and that the man seemed nice. Eventually, she agreed to come with me. We drove to the bookstore, but my mom didn't want the man to see our car, so she parked about 5 minutes away, and we walked the rest of the way. I had the Lego pieces in my jacket pocket because I didn't want to carry them in my hands. As we were walking towards the bookstore, something immediately caught my attention. Standing in front of the store was a man. He looked middle-aged, maybe older, but right away I noticed something strange. He did not look like the man in his Facebook profile picture at all. The man in the profile picture had long gray hair, but this guy was skinny, had a buzz cut, and was wearing a sling bag across his chest. Before we crossed the street, my mom stopped me. She told me to text the man and say that I was already inside the bookstore. She had a bad feeling and didn't want me going near him, so I did exactly that. As we walked past the man, I hid my phone so he wouldn't see that I was texting. I sent him a message saying I was already inside the store and asked if he could come in. Almost immediately, he replied. He told me to come outside, and he kept insisting. At this point, it was really dark outside, and barely anyone was around. The only reason I could even see him clearly was because of a street light nearby. I messaged him again and told him that I wasn't going outside. Even though I was actually walking away toward the car, I wanted him to think I was still inside the bookstore. Then he sent another message. He simply called me an idiot and added the laughing emoji. That message honestly freaked me out. It felt like he knew something was off. As soon as my mom and I got back to the car, we drove away. On the way home, she told me to delete my Facebook Marketplace account and block the man immediately. When we got home, I thanked my mom for coming with me. She hugged me and told me that I should never meet someone that late again. But the story doesn't end there. Around that same time, one of my friends was also selling Lego figures on Marketplace. He was a little older than me, maybe 16. I told him about the whole situation, but I never told him the name of the man. Halfway through the story, my friend suddenly said a name and asked, "Wait, was it this guy?" I was completely shocked. I asked him how he knew. Then he showed me screenshots of a conversation he had with a buyer. It was the same man. And he was telling my friend the exact same story, that he wanted to buy Lego figures for his grandson. My friend immediately messaged him and said that someone had already bought the figure. That wasn't true. He just didn't want to deal with the guy anymore. After that, neither of us ever heard from the man again. I don't know what he's doing now, but my gut feeling tells me that whoever that man really was, he definitely wasn't trying to buy Legos for his grandson. Now, I've personally used Facebook Marketplace quite a few times, and every time things went pretty smooth. But even still, it's always a good idea to double check who it is that you're going to buy stuff from. It's a good practice to always check their profile. If you click on their profile from the marketplace, Facebook should give you a little AI rundown of their profile history. And better yet, search up their name on Google and see if any arrest reports pop up. Stay safe doing Facebook Marketplace deals, and always do your research on people before you go buying something from them. Moving on to story number 4. My stalker ended up taking the lives of 2 girls. This story happened in Ohio in the 80s. I was a teenager long before cell phones existed, living with my parents near Columbus. I don't know when the first time he saw me was, but the first time I saw him was through our kitchen window. We had a pop-out greenhouse window, and it was late at night. I was getting a glass of water. All the lights were off, and I happened to look outside and saw the figure of a man outside the window. I froze and just went back into my room because I was so scared, acting like nothing had happened. It may seem crazy I didn't do more, but this was not the first time that I felt someone was watching me. For weeks before that, I knew someone was outside of my bedroom window. We lived in a 1-story house that backed up to the park, so anyone could go past the back of my house to the main street. It wasn't unusual for people to be around. For weeks late at night, I would wake up with the strongest sense of someone watching me. It was summer, so the window was open, but I had the blinds blocking my view from the outside and a screen to keep out the bugs. After a few times of waking up like this, I started to hear someone touching the screen, like running their fingernails across the mesh. This happened 2 or 3 times a week, and sometimes I would get the courage to run to my parents' room, but by the time we went back, he was never there. They didn't really believe me either. This became an almost nightly thing, and I knew I wasn't imagining it. So when I saw him outside the window, it was almost a relief, because I saw he was real and I wasn't imagining it. This went on for months, until finally it started to snow, and then there were footprints visible outside my window, so my parents at least acknowledged he was real, but didn't really do much. Remember, this was the 80s. Then it all came to a head when I was home alone with a couple of friends getting ready to go out. My parents were away at a dinner, so we had the house to ourselves. The blinds were up on one of the bedroom windows, and as I turned around, there he was, standing directly in the window staring at us. He was a scary-looking guy with bright orange-dyed hair. This time I screamed along with my friends. We ran into the bathroom, which didn't have any outside windows, and I finally got up the courage to run to the kitchen and call 911. The police came at about the same time my parents got home, but there was no sign of the guy. The police basically accused my friends and I of drinking and making the whole thing up. A few weeks later, I happened to see a newspaper and stopped dead in my tracks. There was a picture of the guy on the front page. He had attacked 2 girls in a gas station and ended up taking their lives. The police had shot and killed him when they were trying to detain him. Honestly, I can't remember all the details and haven't been able to find the article since. I remember feeling shocked and relieved that he wasn't coming back. So the guy with dyed orange hair, let's not meet. So this one could have ended far worse for the poster, especially because their parents weren't believing them. It seems like a sign of the times, and I do believe parents during the 80s were far more hard-headed than they are these days. And I think this is because the 80s was kind of like a golden age, where people thought nothing could really go wrong. But I don't know. What do you guys think? How fired am I? I work in IT for a smaller company. The president of the company asked for a meeting with me, and in that meeting requested that I take backups of all important systems. We already do cloud backups, but he made a point to specifically ask if there was a way for only one person to have access to the backups, to which I suggested just having the backups on physical hardware. He said that's fine, and then told me to bring him a hard drive with all the backups, but he made another point to not tell anyone about this conversation, or what I'm doing. I think I know the guy well enough to know this isn't a fraud attempt. I mean, he's already the president of the company, so now I'm kind of worried about myself. When I asked why he wanted me to do this, he said, to protect the company. It's so over, isn't it? What do I do? I'm not really sure what's going on in this story or why the poster thinks he's going to get fired. The president made no indication that he was going to fire the guy, so I think the original poster is just overreacting, or just wanted to post this for whatever reason. I don't know. It's a dumb title given what he actually wrote about, so... I mean, it is Reddit after all, so I don't really know what I expected with these stories. That first one made me kinda mad because the title and the story didn't match up, so let's just go into the next one. Girlfriend threatening our relationship over a TV show. I've been watching and enjoying The Boys TV show ever since Season 2 came out, and I've loved every second of it, including the new season, which is an unpopular opinion, I know. But today I was watching the latest episode, as I have been busy the last few days and was unable to watch it, and she asked what I was watching. I proceeded to tell her the show, where she then researched it and discovered the high amount of certain kinds of scenes within the show, and then proceeded to offer me an ultimatum, explaining I either stop watching the show or lose our 4-year relationship. Wow, we are 22. What do I do? How do I solve this where I keep them both? I love the show and my girlfriend, but I think banning me from a show is unfair. Big dog. It's a wrap. Pack it up. This relationship is completely doomed, dude. If your girlfriend is threatening to leave you over a TV show, unless it's like some freaky shit like Big Mouth, then yeah, it's a wrap. There also might be some other factors at play, but I think this relationship is doomed, and this guy needs to escape immediately. There's no salvaging this one, but let's move on to the next story and see if their problem can be fixed. Caught my roommate using my stuff while I'm at work. What do I do? I, 22 male, live with one other guy. He's 23 male. We've been roommates for 8 months. Cool guy, normally. Set up an old security cam in the living room last week because some packages went missing from the lobby, and I wanted to see who was going in and out. Forgot it was even on. Watched the footage Sunday. He uses my blender every weekday. He sits on my desk chair when I'm gone. He used my electric toothbrush once that I saw, and I think I might throw up. He doesn't know I have the cam. He doesn't know I know. What do I even say? Hey, stop using my toothbrush. Is a sentence I should not have to say to another grown man. Well, these stories just keep getting worse, and I'm not sure what I got myself into by picking this subreddit. The poster's roommate is definitely a weirdo, and he needs to kick him out or move somewhere else. I'm not sure confronting him would even really do anything, because at the end of the day, you still gotta live with the guy, and I really wouldn't want to live with someone like that. So it really does seem like the poster's only 2 options here are to kick the guy out or move out themselves. I'm aware that that's a lot easier said than done, but I'm not seeing really any other alternatives here. Anyways, that was disgusting. Let's move on to the next one. The girl I'm crushing on really embarrassed me publicly, and now I feel used and don't know what to do. I've had a crush on this girl at work for a while. We've got on pretty well and been friendly, but I didn't want to overstep with us being work colleagues. Recently, I tried to make the fact that I fancied her more obvious, and she seemed receptive to it. She invited me to a birthday party for one of her friends as well. It was an event at a big house with a big garden and swimming pool. It started pretty well. It was a chill event. Me and the girl were having a laugh, but she seemed to change when a couple of her friends arrived. One of her friends was just really rude and miserable and kept making nasty comments about everyone, including me. At first, I thought it was just her humor, but she seemed to take an instant dislike to me. The girl from my work just went along with what she was saying, and her whole attitude seemed to change. The group of girls then started drinking heavily and would disappear to smoke a lot. I don't drink currently and hate smoking, so I was left to myself a lot of the time. Just before I was planning to leave, the girls were talking to me and asked if I was a good swimmer, and then suddenly the three girls pushed me into the swimming pool. I was really embarrassed, and the girl from my work didn't seem to care, just found it hilarious. I left pretty much straight away and couldn't believe how she was acting. She messaged me later that night to say sorry and hoped I was okay. I saw her at work on Monday, and she was apologetic and said her friends are not good when drinking. I'm feeling a bit bemused now. I was really into her before the party, but now I don't know how to feel about her. Should I just forget about trying to date her, or just forget about the party and mark it down as a one-off bad scenario? So this one was another pretty bad one. I think it's a big red flag whenever someone you're trying to get with, or someone you're with, switches up on you when they're with their friends. I think that's a big way to determine how they really feel about you. It's like they're trying to downplay the nature of the relationship between you two. But on the other hand, maybe the poster was just taking it the wrong way, seeing signs that weren't really there. And the girl was just trying to be nice by inviting him, or she just wanted somebody to mess with or something. But those are all the details he gave us, so I guess we'll really never know for sure. So let's go ahead and move on to the next story of the day. My girlfriend checked who viewed her story, and now we keep fighting about it. Last weekend, my girlfriend posted this kinda revealing mirror selfie on her close friend's story while we were out drinking with friends. Later that night when we got home, she started laughing because one of my friends viewed it almost immediately after she posted it. She kept making jokes like, "Damn, he was ready," and asking if I think he's secretly into her. At first I laughed too, honestly. But after that I started noticing stuff I guess I ignored before. He replies to almost every story she posts, sends her memes all the time, and somehow they talk enough that he knows random details about her day before I even hear about them. Whenever I mention it though, she says I'm reading way too much into normal behavior, and that I only started caring because of one stupid Instagram story. I can admit I've gotten more aware of it since she brought it up, but at the same time, if one of her friends was constantly messaging me and reacting to everything I posted, I don't think she'd love it either. At this point, I honestly can't tell if there's actually something weird going on between them, or if I'm just getting in my own head. Should I confront the friend directly, bring it up with her again, or just leave it alone before it turns into a bigger issue? Well, from my point of view, it seems like it already has become a bigger issue, seeing as you posted it on this subreddit, and you're asking for advice on what you should do. It definitely seems like there's something weird going on between the girlfriend and the friend. That doesn't seem like a very normal relationship to me. And the friend should definitely know better, because that's his friend's girlfriend. Maybe the girlfriend has a guilty conscience, and that's why she said that to begin with. Or maybe she's just trying to make him jealous or start a fight or something like that, for whatever reason. But those are just my guesses. Am I overreacting for breaking up with my girlfriend over a toilet plunger prank? Okay, this just happened 2 hours ago and I'm still fuming. Apparently on TikTok, the toilet plunger prank has been trending. It's where you ask your partner for help with a clogged toilet, and instead you actually put Nutella, water, and fart spray on a plunger and fling it on your partner. My girlfriend decided to do that prank on me, and normally I can take a joke. After she flung the toilet plunger contents on me, including in my mouth, I obviously died and went to hell, but she showed me a video she was making, and I was like, okay, it's just a prank, fine, whatever. But then I asked her if she bought a new toilet plunger to do this prank, or if she at least washed it. But no, she took the regular toilet plunger we had to do this prank. Y'all, I'm so mad right now. She told me she's so sorry and everything. She forgot to buy a new toilet plunger for the prank. But that means I actually got feces in my mouth. I'm so unbelievably angry. I told her I'm done with her, and now she's pissed at me? Am I overreacting? We live together, so it's not gonna be easy to just break up. Plus, telling all our friends and family we broke up because of a toilet plunger prank feels so childish, but I feel so disrespected. Now, ladies and gentlemen, this is absolutely vile. You would think that before pulling this prank, you'd have the foresight to, actually go and buy a brand new plunger, but no. The girlfriend in the situation decided to use their old, dirty plunger to do this prank with. Aside from that just being absolutely disgusting, the poster could have gotten sick from this. And all for this dumb little prank that's trending on TikTok. In my opinion, I don't think the poster is overreacting at all. I think what he did is an appropriate response to having actual poop flung on you. But let me know what you guys think. Let's move on to number 2. Am I overreacting for kicking my brother-in-law out of my house and talking to the police about Grand Theft Auto charges? When I graduated high school, I also graduated with an associate's degree and received an academic scholarship to finish my bachelor's. My parents had saved for my college tuition, so since they no longer needed that money for the school, they bought me a car instead and helped me with a down payment on a house. The car was a 2000 Monte Carlo SS Pace Car Edition. It meant a lot to me. It wasn't your traditional sports car or anything, but again, I loved it and it was fun to drive. 2 years later, my dad got cancer, and I sold the car to help my family financially. I loved that car, but family came first. Recently, I finally found another one, basically brand new, only 4,000 miles on it. Still had plastic on parts of the interior. I had it shipped from Canada. I drove it exactly once. This past weekend, my wife and I were out of town. My brother-in-law is currently staying with us temporarily, which is already at a point of stress. Without my permission or knowledge, he allowed my niece and her boyfriend to take the car to prom. I didn't even know they were getting ready for prom at my house. The boyfriend wrecked it, totaled it. Now my wife thinks I should let it go and just accept the insurance payout because they're kids. The insurance has offered me quite a bit more than the KBB, but I am furious and honestly heartbroken. I genuinely cannot understand how someone thinks it's okay to hand over the keys to a car they do not own or have authorization to lend out to an 18-year-old kid for prom pictures and a joyride. To me, this wasn't an accident involving borrowed family transportation. This is more than just property. They knowingly took something that wasn't theirs without permission. That feels a lot closer to carelessness and theft than a simple mistake and a lapse in judgment. Am I overreacting against both the boyfriend and my brother-in-law? I am kicking him out of our house and have talked to detectives about Grand Theft Auto charges. Now, I'm gonna have to side with the poster again on this one. This car was obviously something he cared deeply about. And the carelessness of the brother-in-law to not only just lend out the car, but to lend it out to inexperienced high schoolers, it just blows my mind. And I do agree with trying to press charges, but as I was reading through the comments, I saw somebody note that if he did decide to press charges, that he should be prepared for a nasty divorce. And I think that's a valid concern, considering that the wife seems to be taking the brother's side in all of this. But that's all I have to say on that matter, so let's move on to the next one. Am I overreacting? I blocked my friend for dating someone who is 18. Someone I've been friends with for a little under a year is about to be 40 years old, and she's dating an 18-year-old guy. I told her that 18-year-olds are basically kids at our age. She tried to justify it by saying, "I've always viewed him as a man." I was really grossed out when she said that, so I just blocked her number on all social media platforms. Apparently, she's never dated anyone close to her age. Edit. It seems like most of you agree that I am not overreacting. I really was second-guessing myself, because yes, 18 is legal, but it doesn't make it right in my opinion. I have asked many people I know IRL, and they all agreed that it is weird. Even the men I know. But I do live in a pretty conservative state, which is why I asked Reddit. I am sticking to my decision and keeping her out of my life. Update. Legally in our state, he can't buy tobacco or any smoking products till 21, same as alcohol. In my state, you can't even legally marry under the age of 19. It requires specific legal requirements or parental consent. He has not reached the legal age of majority in our state, meaning in the laws of our state, he is still a minor. However, him being 18 makes him fair game for people like her. Final answer before I turn off notifications for good. I am glad I blocked her. I could never be friends with someone who dates minors. I no longer feel guilty about just blocking her mid-conversation. I won't delete this post or anything in case some younger people read this. Maybe it could save a life. I understand humans are not perfect. I don't expect my friends and loved ones to be perfect, but I damn sure expect them not to date minors. Wow. I've always viewed him as a man. What do you mean by that? I feel like that comment alone gives enough evidence to suggest that this woman may have been talking to this guy before he turned 18. And while 18 is technically legal, if you're like 40 or something, I still feel like that's kind of weirdo behavior, in my opinion. I feel like at that age you should be dating people that are in your age range. I'm gonna have to say the poster was not overreacting in this case. I think our friend was a weirdo. Definitely not somebody that you'd want to be friends with, but let's move on to the next one. Alright, this one's pretty short, but it gave me a little chortle, chuckle, giggle even. So let's take a look at it. Am I overreacting? This is how my boyfriend sleeps. And I'll put a little picture up of the picture they provided. Like a damn mummy completely wrapped up. I'm constantly worried that he's going to suffocate or something. He spends all night like this, sometimes even wrapping more than one blanket around his face. He says it feels nice. Not to mention how terrifying it is to randomly wake up in the middle of the night, look over and see that. Am I overreacting? He says I'm being dramatic. Now on this one I am going to say the poster is overreacting, and all the comments seem to be agreeing with me. I used to sleep exactly like this, because I don't know, it's just something about it is so comfortable. I don't sleep like that anymore. I guess I just, I guess it just got better or something. I don't know. But I guess I really never looked at it from the perspective of a partner. I never really considered how terrifying it would be to like look over in the middle of the night and see that next to you. But whatever, let's move on to the next one. Am I overreacting? A little kid keeps coming into my house, and the poster provided a picture, I'm assuming they captured from their security camera, of a kid like crawling through their doggy door or something. But here's the post. I live out in the country, near a big main road and on a county road. I'm the closest property to the main road, but as you continue down I have a couple of neighbors. We live on 40 acres and have a little farmhouse where I live with my husband and dogs, along with some farm animals outside. I do not have kids. We live a calm and peaceful life. However, there have now been 2 occasions on which a young child that lives a third of the mile down the road has come into our house uninvited. The first time I was home alone and had just showered, doing my nails and watching a show in my makeup room. Next thing I know, I see a small shadow that looked like a preschool-age kid open my fence gate and open my front door. I had no idea who this was, and I FaceTimed my husband in case he knew who this could be. But as we checked the cameras, there were no cars or other adults around. I was in my underwear with my door closed and freaking out. Like I mentioned, I live out in the country, and due to my neighbors all being so far away, had no idea who this kid was or where he came from. I put some pants on and went out into my living room, and this kid was running around my living room and kitchen, playing with my dogs with no worry in the world. I tried to get him to calm down and asked him what his name was or where his parents were, and nothing. He ignored me and kept playing. After a couple of minutes, I think he got bored, and he opened my door, went out the gate, and ran out to the back of my house. I lost sight of him and continued to look out towards the road in case I could figure out where he came from. Finally, I saw a young girl approaching from the neighbor's side of the road, and she shouted at me, "Where is he?" I told her I had no idea where he was, but that I had seen him go towards the back of my house, and she could go look for him. She looked annoyed, but I guess she was able to grab him at some point and took him back towards the direction our neighbor's house is. At that point, I had honestly been super upset and yelled, "Keep that kid out of my property and out of my house," to which she just yelled, "Sorry," over her shoulder. After that, no one ever came back to apologize. My husband eventually went to the family to ask what had happened, and was told that they had been unloading groceries, and the little boy managed to run away. How they didn't realize this until so much later, I'm not sure. Anyways, a year later, I would say this boy is 5 or 6 now. I get a call from my husband while we were at work. He tells me there is a little boy in our house, and that he came through our dog door. I immediately ask if it's the same one as last time. He says he saw him on our cameras, but he can't be sure. He tells me that before calling me, he already called the cops, but that they are on their way. The footage shows this kid opening our closed fence gate and coming to our front door. Our dogs are barking at him in the yard. He attempts to open the front door, sees it's locked, knocks, and then just sits there thinking. Then, he crawls in through our dog door. Our dogs have the ability to go in and out of the house as they like since their fence is closed in. But I guess this kid just figured he could do the same. Anyway, he comes in and opens a dog door to make sure the dogs can come in too. He takes off his shoes when he comes in, and then he goes to jump onto my couch and play with my dog. After that, he turns on my TV, goes into my fridge, and grabs ice pops and eats an orange from our fruit basket. Huh? He is in our house unsupervised for a total of about 15 minutes until the cops arrive and are able to get him out. He crawled out through the dog door. The cops ask him his name, and he tells them. They ask who his parents are and where he lives, and he tells them that as well. The cops tell him he is not allowed to do this, and that this is not his house. A couple of minutes later, a car pulls into my driveway. It's the parents. The cops talk to them for a bit, and they all leave. My husband had just left work to get home, but by the time he got here, everyone was gone. The cops pretty much just said that it was just a kid being a kid. My husband then went down to the neighbors and told the parents to take care of their kid. I was upset because he did wait for me to go talk to them. He knew how upset I was. The dad apologized and stated that the boy had been grounded and snuck out through his bedroom window. Apparently, he just likes to play with my dogs. The dad told the little boy to apologize to my husband, At this, the little boy spit at his dad. A week later, my husband got a call from the parents asking if by chance the kid was in our house again because they could not find him. We were both at work but did not see him in any of our cameras. At this point, I've calmed down quite a bit, but as soon as I remember, I get quite mad. I think it is insanely upsetting that I am more aware of where this little boy is than his own parents are. Once again, he is not right next door to me. He had to be unsupervised for at least 30 minutes in order to make his way to my house, about a 5-minute walk, be here for 15 minutes, and have the cops get here until his parents found him. He knows what he is doing, the parents are aware, but no one truly takes accountability for it. The little boy says he likes to play with my dogs, but instead of playing with them in my yard, he comes into my house and makes himself at home. I feel bad for calling the cops, but I truly feel like there's a need to report this because I'm scared for my safety and that of my animals and property. If he were to leave the gate open, my dogs would definitely run out into the main road and get run over. My house is not child-proofed at all. We had a flamethrower on the kitchen table the day he came in. My husband had killed a spider outside with it. I am concerned for this little boy's safety, but at the same time, I do not want to be responsible or liable if anything were to happen to him in our property. I also would like to feel safe in my own home. I don't feel like I should be having to keep my dogs in a kennel all day and close their doggy door just because there is a kid out there who is not monitored and was never taught to respect other people's privacy. If he snuck out through his window, I'm sure he could sneak in through one as well. There's so many what-ifs in this situation, and it might just be my anxiety, but I'm definitely very upset. I guess this is more of a rant, and I just hope this doesn't happen again, because I do intend to have the cops on speed dial. But again, am I overreacting? Well, that story was very long and very wild. Not at all what I was expecting. I thought it was just going to be some funny little story about a kid sneaking in through a doggy door, but it seems there are much larger issues here. Like, for him to be disappearing for such large periods of time, the parents really have to be not paying attention to him very much at all. And it seems like they also aren't taking any accountability for it either. So the poster is definitely not overreacting on this one. The Ham Man. Recent reader, first time poster. I recently left my job as a meat cutter at a local grocery store, and I filled up my notes app with ridiculous stories from that place. The work was great. My direct department manager is one of the best men I've ever known, but the customers, and even the non-customers, January, right after the holidays. We're coasting along, recovering after busting our asses. The store I worked at hand cuts every single product that hits the shelves, and everyone's enjoying joint pain and calluses decreasing. A man calls in. I have the joy of answering. Meat department, this is me. What can I do for you? Ham man. If I bring in a ham I bought a month ago, can you cut it for me? Not a concern. Our hams are dated to last about 2 months, though that's not even his issue. However, me. I'm sorry, sir. Once a product has left the store, it can't be brought back to be sliced. Ham man. So you can't do it? Me. No, sir. If it left the store, we can't rework it. And then he declares, but I didn't buy it from you guys. A long pause to take several breaths, and some struggling to continue with the same level of customer service. Me. Then we definitely can't do that. It's not even our product. Ham man. Okay. I'll call the local butcher shop. Me. Good luck. Have a good one. In this instance, you didn't give us your business, buddy. You don't get our services. Many odd encounters at that job, but he was certainly the silliest. Now with a title like Ham Man, I definitely expected this story to be a lot more ominous than it turned out to be. But what I'm more curious about is why this man has been holding on to a ham for an entire month, and why he hasn't gotten cut yet. I mean, if he was aging it, it'd be different, but then again, I'm not an expert on ham, so I have no clue. Anyways, that was Ham Man. Let's get into our next one with the crazy title. A customer threatened to punch me over a loyalty burger discount. I've worked at my supermarket for 10 plus years. On Fridays, we run a burger promotion linked to a specific bank. You have to follow the terms and conditions in the app and have an active loyalty card to get the deal. A guy comes in only for the burger. It rings up full price because he didn't follow the steps. I try to explain the process to him, but he just starts shouting over me. I checked our system. He literally hasn't swiped his card at our company in 3 years. He just spawned out of nowhere because he saw a cheap promo. When I told him he wasn't getting the deal, he lost his mind. He shook his fist right in front of my eye and told me, "I'll punch your teeth out." He then complained to my manager that I have no customer service and should be fired. The couple in line behind him saw the whole thing and agreed with me. It's wild how violent people will get to save a couple bucks. Listen, If you are at the point in your life that you are getting violent over the price of a burger, you need to do some serious reevaluating. We don't live in ancient times anymore where people have to fight over food. If you're getting violent over food in general, there's something seriously wrong with you. Stay safe out there, and remember, these people do walk among us. On to our next story, simply titled, Card Only, in all caps. So one day, while we were working our usual shift, we had a bit of a fiasco with the self-checkout. Someone had decided it would be a great idea to dump a whole bag of wet coins into the machine, effectively turning it into a coin geyser and breaking the whole thing. So we had to pull all the soggy coins out, test the machine, and confirm it was out of order. Then we put up 3 massive card-only signs, including one that was literally covering the coin slot and the cash slot, just to make sure nobody missed it. But as you can guess, not everyone reads signs. In comes one of our regular customers. He looks at the machine, looks at the sign, and then decides to lift up the sign like he's uncovering a treasure. He tries to shove his cash in, and when it doesn't work, he just looks at me and says, "I don't think this is taking cash, dog." At that point, I just gave him the most bewildered look I could muster. It was like a comedy sketch in real life. Now, I have to confess something to you guys. I've actually had a situation like this happen to me before, where I was the customer in the situation. It was at like a Zaxby's or something, and the drink machine said out of order, but I had this overwhelming impulse to check it just to make sure it doesn't work, and it turns out it did. But the sign didn't specify why it was out of order, so they could have totally just dumped a vial of T-virus in there, and I wouldn't have ever known. But I'm not feeling any ill effects yet, so that's besides the point. Let's get into the next story. Guy in the thrift store furious that I tried to help him buy the item he wanted to buy. For context, I work at a large thrift store, probably the largest by volume in our area. Our inventory covers probably 4,000 to 5,000 square feet in total. I schedule pickups for new items through our system and man the front desk about 95% of the time. There's a regular who hates me. Specifically, he hates that I do not have encyclopedic knowledge of our inventory. He is 6'4" and always wearing weird, shapeless jackets. I will confess that my own dislike for him is what is driving me to tell you that he also reeks of something that is either body odor or cat urine. For about 20 minutes every day, he will walk around the shop floor in silence, looking at everything the floor workers have set out, and then he will approach me empty-handed to ask how much an item costs. He is not describing these items to me in any kind of detail, for the record. He asks me how much the red chair or shoes will cost. I then have to ask him to clarify what he is talking about, which makes him extremely irritated. One time he actually brought the item he wanted priced to the front, only it was still in a cardboard box that he would not open. I asked him several times if I could see or know what he was holding, and he rolled his eyes and said, "I didn't say what it was, I asked how much it was." I had to call my supervisor over from his office to tell the man that yes, he did have to show me what was in the cardboard box, as I am not yet capable of seeing through solid objects. Today, he came in again and did his usual routine, but he seemed more sullen than usual, if that was possible. He finally came to the front and asked me how much the clear Tupperware was. I assume that, if you are reading this, you know that most Tupperware is clear. I asked him which ones, and got up to go find out what he was talking about. This was apparently Joe Catpea's last straw. He scoffed and pointed at me, then he told me to never ask which ones. I told him I did not in fact know what he was talking about, that I am not in charge of inventory at the store. He kept repeating, "Which ones? You asked me which ones?" at increasing volume until my manager had to get involved and ask him to either bring the Tupperware to the front and pay whatever they cost or get out. He did in fact pay for the $2 apiece large Tupperware containers. My manager then took the guy outside and told him that he was to bring anything he wanted to ask me about or negotiate the price of to the front from now on. Mr. Catpea does not like this rule, and he has said things indicating he might never come back. Please let it be true. You know, misery loves company, and I think this guy is very miserable, and he wants someone else to feel the same misery that he is feeling. And that's why he continuously goes to this one thrift store to harass this one employee. And as a side note, I really do envy people with this level of patience. Once I finish up college, I want to be going into the IT field, so I guess we'll see how I fare. Let's get into the next one. This middle-aged guy called a negotiator thinks our corporate grocery store is a bazaar in the middle of nowhere. I work as a cashier at a big-name grocery chain, and usually the job is just mindlessly scanning barcodes and asking if people have a loyalty card. But every Tuesday, around 4 p.m., the negotiator shows up, and my heart just sinks. He always brings a single carton of organic milk and maybe a loaf of bread to my lane, and instead of paying, he starts a full-on debate about the price. He is absolutely convinced that the digital price tags on our shelves are just a starting point for a healthy dialogue between the merchant and the customer. Last week, it was raining pretty hard outside, and he leaned over the counter with this conspiratorial look on his face. He pointed at the milk, which was clearly marked $4.99, and said, "Look at the weather out there. Nobody is coming in today. Your inventory is just sitting here losing value by the minute. I will give you $3 for the milk, and we can call it a rainy day discount." I tried to explain for the 100th time that I literally do not have a button on my register that says rainy day discount, and that I just work here for $10 an hour. He didn't care and just kept talking about the laws of supply and demand like he was a professor of economics. The worst part is the line that starts forming behind him. People just trying to get home with their groceries, and they have to listen to this man explain why the humidity levels should affect the price of sourdough bread. He once tried to offer me a bundle deal, where if he bought 2 bags of chips, I should give him the dip for free, because they are complimentary goods. My manager usually has to come over and tell him to pay the full price or leave, but the negotiator just smiles and says he will let us think on his offer until next week. It adds 10 minutes of pure stress to my shift every single time, and I honestly think he just enjoys the performance more than the actual 3 cents he thinks he might save. You know, I honestly don't understand people who walk into like a Publix or something and start thinking they can haggle a price down. Like, yeah, the prices might be outrageous, but this isn't a flea market. You're not getting any deals here. This guy sounds like an absolute hassle to deal with, and I'm so glad I'm not in the poster's position. They ruined my laundry, so I made their next load memorable. This happened a few years ago when I was living in the dorms at college. If you've ever done laundry in a dorm, you already know. It's basically a gladiator arena with lint. The dryers were not cheap, so I always tried to be strategic and economical. I'd set a timer, show up early, so I could get my clothes out right when it finished. One day, I came back a few minutes before my cycle was done, with my bag of snack-sized Doritos, feeling very responsible, only to find my clothes had been pulled out early and dumped onto a table. Annoying already, but it gets better. The table was covered in a puddle of soda, so now my almost dry clothes were damp, sticky, and smelled like Pepsi. I was furious. Not mild inconvenience furious, more like I paid for that dryer time and now I have to rewash everything furious. Now, I'm not a destructive person, but I do believe in educational pettiness. I noticed the person's clothes were still in the dryer, so I added the full bag of snack-sized Doritos into their laundry load, shut the door, and set it to high heat and let the cycle continue. When that dryer finished, I happened to be hanging out in the lounge outside my laundry area. A girl came out looking angry with a laundry basket full of orange-streaked Dorito-smelling clothes. Was it mature? No. Did it restore balance to the universe? Also no. Did it make me feel better in that exact moment? Absolutely. Moral of the story: don't touch other people's laundry, or you might end up smelling like a walking snack aisle. Now I can relate to this one a little bit, because during my time in the Marine Corps, I had to live in the barracks. And while I was living in the barracks, we only had about 2 to 4 washers and dryers for around 100 to 200 people. And it seemed like every time I decided to do my laundry, they also wanted to do their laundry. So there were more than a few occasions where I went to go get my clothes out of the washer or dryer, and they were in very precarious situations, or just missing clothes entirely. And if you know anything about uniforms, they're really expensive. So I can't exactly blame the poster for doing what they did. But just talking about this laundry situation is making me angry, so let's move on to our next story. Revenge against the shitty flatmate. Love this forum so much because I'm a petty person. I've been trying to think of a petty revenge thing I have done, but none comes to mind. However, my sister, who is petty as well, recently did a pretty good petty revenge against her unreasonable flatmate. Just a bit of background story about her flatmate. Her flatmate, let's call her Karen, loved to steal food and kitchenware from my sister and the other flatmates. Karen would, for example, take half of someone else's onion and place it back. She would also use other people's pots and knives and put them in the sink afterwards without even trying to clean them. Karen would also put her used socks and pantyhose in the hallway and would not pick them up for months, Karen also had a used coconut placed in the kitchen for 2 months that started to mold, but she wouldn't throw it into the bin for religious reasons. One time, she burnt a pot which the landlady provided for everyone to use, and she just tossed the burnt pot onto the balcony and did not attempt to throw it away properly or purchase a new pot. Around 2 months ago, my sister found Karen's student card on the floor and had the perfect idea. My sister placed the student card in the bathtub plug in the burnt pot and told me if Karen rights the wrong and throws away the burnt pot properly, she would find all the things she wants. But obviously, Karen wouldn't. So for 2 months, Karen had been complaining about her lost student card and the lost bathtub plug. She did ask my sister if she threw away the bathtub plug, but my sister kept a straight face and said she didn't throw the bathtub plug away. She indeed didn't. It was only until 2 days ago that Karen found her lost student ID card and the bathtub plug in the burnt pot. She sent a text into the flatmate group and said replacing the student card cost her $1,000, total BS, and that she would like some reimbursement. Obviously, no one replied to her, and it was Karen's last day in the apartment anyway, as she was following her boyfriend back to India. By the way, since Karen had been using religious reasons to refuse to throw away the molded coconut and other stuff, my sister also decided to use religious reasons to retaliate. When Karen walked past the hallway and left her used pantyhose there, my sister would say those pantyhose were a symbol of seduction in my sister's religion, and ask if Karen was trying to seduce my sister's boyfriend. Karen then quietly threw away her socks and pantyhose, and never left any pantyhose or socks in the hallway again. Well, Karen sounds like an absolutely vile person to have to deal with, and I'm glad I've never had to deal with any roommates like that. Leaving the clothes on the floor was pretty bad, but the coconut? The moldy coconut? That's the next level. I'm sure the moldy coconut would present a significant health hazard as well, so I don't know why they didn't just report her to the school and get her kicked out. Like, sure, it's for your religious reasons or whatever, but it's presenting an active health hazard for everyone that lives there. But those are just my thoughts. Let's move on to the next one. Delivery driver revenge. I spent some time doing deliveries for the apps you all likely know. It's a great last resort to avoid dying, but it's a pretty soul-crushing gig because you see how very little the companies and most customers think of you, so your spirits can get pretty low some days. On one of those days, I delivered an order to a beautiful 3-story townhome in a row of townhomes that overlooked a street. Each home was separated from the street by a gated front yard that locked from the inside. Upon trying to open the front gate, I found it locked. I called the customer, but the phone number didn't ring though. They hadn't bothered to provide a working phone number. This is a constant source of frustration with the gig. Customers will live in a place where it is difficult or impossible to get to them. They'll provide no means of contacting them or refuse to check their phones, and then get mad at the drivers for not being able to get to them. And that was the case this time. After being unable to contact them, I set the order just outside the locked gate, took a photo of the order, messaged them to inform them of the situation, wished them a nice evening, and left. It was fairly late at night, maybe around 1 a.m., and the area was completely empty of cars and people, so their food wasn't in immediate danger of being stolen by a passerby. I considered the matter settled. Shortly after, I saw that my rating took a hit, and my tip was removed by the customer. I had delivered the food as closely to the customer as they allowed me to get. They had refused to let me get further, and they had penalized me for it. This sort of thing happens often, but as I said, I was already in no mood for more of it today, so I decided to get some petty revenge. I ordered a bike lock from Amazon, one that isn't expensive, but is still extremely difficult to cut through, the kind you can only unlock with a combination. When it arrived, I set the combination to a random 4-digit number, since leaving it at the starting 000 would make it too easy to guess. If I retaliated too soon, it might be apparent that it was their snub delivery driver. And though these companies rarely penalize their drivers for anything, it wasn't worth the risk of losing the gig at the time, so I waited a couple of weeks and then decided it was time. Late one weeknight, I returned to the vicinity of the townhouse in question. I parked a couple blocks away, threw on a hoodie capable of covering most of my face, and removed any distinguishing accessories. All was silent and completely dead, but I still walked casually to avoid suspicion, in case someone happened to appear. When I got to the row of homes, I made sure the hood was pulled up, lowered my face, and strolled up to the right one. In a fluid motion, I wrapped the bike lock around the metal bars of the gate and clicked it closed, tightly trapping their front gate shut. Then I strolled casually away. You locked me out and then punished me for not getting in. I will punish you by locking you in. Now I'm going to go ahead and say 100% this shit did not happen. This sounds like one of those things where you have an argument with somebody and then you go to take a shower and you start imagining scenarios in which you would have won the argument or something. There's also a ton of M-dashes in this story, which is usually like an indicator that they used AI to make something up. Also, I hate DoorDash. They banned me for speeding. What do you want me to do? Give the customer cold food? Whatever. Next story. Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, I might have just found the most heckin' wholesome Reno, petty Reno, Revengerino story I could have possibly found. Holy chungus. Happy Mother's Day. Ugh. To the good mothers out there, I mean it. But my mother's gift was a taste of her own petty bullshit. Backstory summed up, grew up in a very Catholic home. Mother was in the choir, was a teacher at the Catholic school, ended up working in their offices. Very conservative. I went to private school until 8th grade, then luckily got to go to a big public high school in a big city. After high school, I joined the army. Saw enough of the outside world, met enough people in my travels to really shape who I am and what I believe in. So here I am, 36, disabled vet, engaged, and have 3 really good kids. We are a very left and supportive house, so you can see the battle I might be having with my mom, a battle that's been going on for a while, but really ramped up during this administration. Criticism towards me and how I raise my kids, the lack of Jesus, and comments after I attend a 50-51 protest or two. For my past birthday, I got a card with a note that said a donation to the free store was made in my name. I mean, cool, but my mother is not the charitable type. It was done in a spiteful way, which, fine dude, whatever. Fast forward to today, Mother's Day. After a while of not talking, she sends me baby pictures of me and her holding me, and sent, "Thanks for making me a mom." I responded back that I had made a charitable donation in her name to my local women's health center, Planned Parenthood Place. A really good one at that. Anyways, hopefully her donation makes it to one not quite ready to celebrate Mother's Day. Anyways, thanks for reading my little petty revenge story. I hope you mothers out there have a good one. Attention everyone, a man with mommy issues just dropped a straight heat, wholesome chungaloid petty revenge story on r/petty revenge. You just know he was bouncing up and down, chortling in his little chair the whole time he was writing that, salivating at the thought of all these community awards and up-duderitos coming his way. This is definitely the most cornball story I've read on here so far. He really owned his chud mom with that awesome comeback. Truly a masterclass in reticate. Asked to leave a hot tub. I, 30 male, go to a nice gym with a health suite. We have a sauna, a steam room, cold plunges, and a hot tub. So last night after my workout, I changed my clothes, took a shower, and got into the hot tub. About 3 minutes in, 2 women in their mid to late 20s approached the hot tub, chatting and preparing to get in, when I saw them looking at me in a weird way. Then, they got into the hot tub, but proceeded to look at me in a judging, even disgusted way. I'm a fairly decent-looking, well-groomed guy, so I didn't really understand what was happening. I checked myself, but found nothing. Finally, about 2 minutes later, one of them says, "Are you getting out or not?" in a very pointed tone. I was like, "Well, I just got in, so not really." And she said, "We feel uncomfortable with a man here. You should really get out and come back later when we're finished. A random man shouldn't be sharing a hot tub with girls he doesn't know." And I was like, "Well, I got here first and I'm minding my own business after a heavy workout. If you're uncomfortable, you can go to the sauna and come back when I'm done." She got angry and started raising her voice, saying, "Men nowadays don't know how to be gentlemen. We literally just ask you to come back when we're done. Why are you being a dick about it?" To say I was shocked is an understatement, but I was too tired to deal with it. So I got out, went to the steam room, waited for them to leave, and then came back to finish my hot tub session. But this has left me with a very unpleasant feeling. Well, we're off to a very strong start. First of all, he was there first. Second of all, it's a public hot tub. There's gonna be people there you don't know. You either share it, or you don't use it. That's why it's called a public hot tub, and not a private hot tub. This should be common sense, but common sense seems to be more uncommon as time goes on. Let's get into the next story. Neighbor holds a grudge for years because my master quilter mom gave her the wrong free Christmas gift. My mom passed away a few years ago, but I remember this story. My mom loved sewing to the point that she went to Jo-Ann Fabrics so often that a manager asked her to apply. My mom used to make quilts as a hobby, but started selling them. One year, she made a quilt for almost everyone she knew and cared for. Cousins, aunts, our other neighbor friend, not the one coming. She made a wall quilt for my paternal grandmother that had photos on it with my grandmother and my grandfather, then her 3 children, and each of their children. Her love for quilting went so far that after years of working at Jo-Ann Fabrics, she was invited to join a privately owned quilt shop to work the long arm machine and teach classes for people trying to pick up the hobby. She even copyrighted a few patterns. Our neighbor when I was younger was a sweet lady slowly transformed into becoming cold and distant. My mom was starting to pull back as a friend a little due to the negativity. One year she was over visiting, and over coffee mentioned to my mom that she would like one of her quilts for Christmas. My mom found a pattern for a quilt with a pocket that you could roll the quilt up into, and fold it into the pocket, making a pillow. I had one as a child, and despite being a boy, thought it was a really cool quilt. I still have it. Mom made her one and gave it to her for Christmas. Fast forward a few years, and the neighbor came over to see my mom and said, paraphrased, "You really hurt me a few years ago." My mom asked why. "I asked you for a quilt for Christmas, but instead you gave me this ugly blanket thing that rolled up into a pillow." My mom was understandably upset by this. Now this one made me kinda sad, because the mom put all that time and effort into making a quilt for her, and she just did not appreciate it at all. I cherish every single gift I receive, even if it's something I don't like, because someone put their time, effort, and thoughts into picking that out for me, and to not appreciate it would be an insult to them. So I implore you to do the same, and cherish every single gift that you ever receive. Let's move on to the next story. Elevator entitlement. There's an old guy, I presume around 70s, 80s, who lives in the same apartment as me. Now this guy was either rich or LARPing is rich. Either way, he is still extremely arrogant. Me and him have never talked, and I plan for it to stay that way. A few hours ago, me and him were waiting for the elevator. When it arrived, he went in first, presumably to try and close the elevator doors before I could get in. Well, that didn't work, and I was squashed on two sides of the elevator, and I'm sure we all know that feeling. Seeing that, he did not bother to go over to the buttons to open the door until a lady, the only other person in the elevator, did so. My apartment is a relatively tall building, so a very long while of awkwardness. Now I wouldn't care too much about this if it was a regular person, but this old guy definitely found me repulsive for his expensive taste. Apparently, because this was not the first time. In the past, he looked at me like I was some sort of peasant on several occasions, and I assume he also does this with some other people. He probably finds other people dirty as well from what I've seen. Pretty short post, but small things like this really piss me off. Stuck in between two elevator doors and you won't open it so I can get out? Nah, we're throwing hands. As unlikely as it is, if those elevator doors had malfunctioned and the elevator started to move while the guy was still stuck between the doors, things definitely could have ended very badly. I'm not sure why the poster didn't do anything to this guy, but good on him for not doing anything, because he probably would have gotten in trouble regardless. Again, some of these people have levels of restraint that I can only dream of trying to attain. Let's move on to the next story. The park is closed, ma'am. Big group of tourists arrived at park gates, well known in Southeast Asia and globally for being entitled. It's past 5 p.m. when the park closes. All the kiosks are closed, people are leaving. It's well advertised that it closes at 5 p.m. Lady pushes to the front and is having a passive-aggressive argument with a security guard. She's trying to convince him that the guys at the parking lot told her it's open. He's pointing to the clearly marked hours. Instead of accepting the fact that the parking guy got it wrong, or maybe misunderstood, she's trying to force her way in. Eventually, the security guard who isn't paid enough says she can come in and speak to the front desk. She then storms through and continues to berate and argue with the staff that she was told the park was open. She was like a broken record. The parking guy told us it was open. We close at 5, ma'am. But the parking guy... She really thought she could argue her way into them opening the entire park for them as the sun is going down. This whole thing must have taken them 25 minutes or more, whilst there's 20 of them standing around outside, wasting the rest of the daylight hours on their holiday. Fascinating behavior. Normal people would go, I guess I didn't check Google Maps, and I guess the guy at the parking gate gave me the wrong information. Let's go, guys. As I said before, common sense isn't so common anymore. You'd assume after the third time of being told that the park is closed, they just turn around and go home. But no. Let's stand here and get told that the park is closed for 25 more minutes. Surely that'll help. Maybe they've tried this before and it actually worked. Who knows? Let's move on to the next story. Live streamer Karen. So a couple of weeks ago, I went to a smash burger spot in my city's downtown that's pretty popular online. When I walked in, it was right after the lunch rush and dead empty. There was one cook and a manager, and they were blasting music. I got my food, chatted with the cook, jamming to the music, and was having an overall good time. That's when Karen walked in with her boyfriend. She had her iPhone on a gimbal and was kind of slowly waving it back and forth in the restaurant. As she walked past me, I noticed that she was live streaming to about 60 people on Instagram or Facebook. Karen and her BF went up to the counter and ordered their food. Then she asked the manager, "Can you turn off the music? I might get banned on my live stream for unlicensed music." To which the manager very bluntly said, "No, we're not going to turn it off." The Karen immediately replied with, "Then you need to cancel my order and give me a refund." And the manager, again, very bluntly replied to her, "Well, you haven't paid for anything yet, so you can leave." She walked out the door with an exaggerated ugh, and her boyfriend trailing behind her. Now I'm going to be honest, I really don't like IRL live streamers. I think they're just a general nuisance to everyone around them, especially the ones that have text-to-speech turned on at max volume, which admittedly can be pretty funny at times, but is still really annoying. Also, why would you ask for a refund if you haven't even paid for anything? Whatever, let's get into the next story. I ban a woman from a social media page. She threatens to call the police. I have a small Facebook group that functions as a community message board because I found the other ones too cluttered. Very simple set of rules that are mostly self-policed since it's a smallish town. But I do ban people from time to time if their problems or try to shit it up with arguing about national politics or things that are irrelevant. Anyway, this woman who's been kind of a problem before is apparently a member of AA by her own admission. That's fine. That's all well and good. Good for her. That was until she publicly outed another member of AA. For the uninitiated, the second A is anonymous. That is a huge violation of community trust. I banned her in a second because that is something you do not do to people in recovery. So she starts messaging me, and messaging me, and messaging me, then my wife, then the other admin saying it's not fair and she doesn't even remember doing it. I told her to go make amends with the person she did it to, and if that person was okay with it, then I'd reconsider. I get that we don't always catch people at their best moment, and I wasn't the wronged party, so this seemed maybe a little more than reasonable. Of course, she followed up with something far more reasonable, refused to apologize to the person, and threatened to call the police if I didn't allow her to post in a Facebook group. She phrased it like she was doing me a favor by not having already done it. Great way to make yourself not look like a menace, lady. You know, I don't think this lady's entitled. I think she's just stupid. The cops aren't gonna arrest somebody for banning you in a Facebook group. I know I keep harping on this, but common sense really is out the window. Now before I get on with the Reddit stories, I'm going to give you guys one of my own personal stories. I worked security at a construction site for a good little while, and while I was there, I had a coworker who was about the same age as me. I think he might have been a year older than me. And every single day, without fail, he just would not stop talking about his romantic encounters with women. Listen, I'm not the most attractive man in the world, but I completely mogged this guy into oblivion. We are two fully grown men. We can talk about anything in the world, and this is what you want to talk to me about? We're not in high school anymore. Literally nobody cares. And I'm pretty sure he was lying anyways, because like I said before, like looking at this guy, it made me feel like I was one of those marble statues that you always see in museums. Anyway, had to give you guys my r/coworker story. Now let's get into the ones from Reddit. Starting off with coworker used ChatGPT to write his brother's eulogy. 70-year-old coworker was ranting and raving about how great ChatGPT is. He then proudly proclaimed that he used it to write his brother's eulogy. I felt bad, but I could not stop laughing. It's so funny how quick we have given up on all personal thought. Can people not write their own eulogy about their own brother without AI writing 90% of it? He clarified that he only edited a few bits here and there. Now I know that one was pretty short, but it was just too diabolical not to include in the video. Ladies and gentlemen, don't use AI to write eulogies. It's supposed to be your words coming from your heart, not some text from an emotionless machine. Now this guy's probably going to get haunted for the rest of his life. Let's get into the next one. Dumb rules are there for a reason. I've worked for a few different companies over the years, and every single one of them has some really dumb rules. Everyone just complains about these rules, but nobody ever wonders why these rules are in place. Years ago, I worked at a call center. Management was pretty chill. As long as you did your job, they left you alone. It wasn't very busy either. Most days, you would have a few minutes between calls, and people would use that time to surf the net on the computer, or whatever, and management kinda looked the other way. Until one day, this new hire, let's call him Danny, came along. He started watching YouTube on the computer between calls. The problem was, people from other departments would walk by our area, and they would make comments to our manager about how we were not busy enough. Staff had time to watch YouTube, etc. So the manager told us to not watch videos on the company computer because it was bad optics. Message received, right? The following day, Danny brought in his personal laptop with movies and TV shows loaded. He started watching shows between calls on his personal laptop. The manager said no watching videos on the company computer. This is my personal computer. So new rule. In between calls, no more doing anything. Just sit there. No surfing the net, no personal devices, nothing. Danny is a giant moron, and people like him are the reason why we have stupid rules at work. Now I'm sure everybody knows at least one Danny. Or maybe you're a Danny. You just don't know it yet. This is a good reminder never to push the specifics of something, because it can backfire pretty badly. Like, I get it. They said no watching videos on the company computer. But did you really expect them to allow you to bring in your personal computer to watch videos on? Don't ruin nice things for other people because you want to be all extra. Let's move on to the next one. Coworker made me sit outside at the entrance of our workplace for 3 hours. I work as a night security guard, and the security guard who works during the day is my coworker, towards whom I am suddenly developing a kind of hatred. Last night, I arrived at work as usual, around 6:30 p.m., and when I got there, the security post was completely dark, with no lights on. I had the feeling that the day guard had left. I'm not bothered by his leaving, since we had discussed a secret place to hide the key to the front door before he left. I checked, and the key was not there either. The main gate was also locked, which enforced that the security guard really went home before my arrival. I started calling him on the phone to ask where he was, but it was useless, and he kept lying to me, saying he was at the security post. Therefore, I called our security supervisor, who lives quite far from the security post, but he drove his motorcycle and then came to the premises and made me sit on the back of his motorcycle to go and get the coworker. He had turned off his mobile phone at the time. We arrived at a large, unfinished, unlit building. We got out and went inside, looking for the fool. We had barely walked in when we saw his shoes and clothes scattered everywhere. We searched several rooms until we reached one where the fool was asleep in his underwear, completely drunk. We asked where the key to his workplace was, and he replied that he had left it at the workplace. The supervisor even suggested he is afraid the fool might have lost it. It was clear we weren't going to get the key, so we left the drunk in the makeshift room. The supervisor called the owner of the property where we worked as security guards and lied, saying I couldn't get in, so he should leave his house and come open the entrance gate with a spare key. He lived quite close. This happened around 7 p.m. Then the supervisor left, leaving me to wait alone. I waited and called the client, who also assured me he would arrive soon. I waited until he showed up at 10:30 p.m. None of the keys he brought opened the front door, so his son, who was with him, had to jump the door and enter the property. We discovered the key was at the security post, but the fool had accidentally locked the front door and kept the keys in the room. My coworker showed up this morning, half drunk from last night's drinking, saying he was disappointed that I called the supervisor. Imagine that. I decided to confront him about his childish and stupid behavior. You know, drunks are really hard to deal with. It's almost impossible to get them to follow instructions. So dealing with a drunk coworker, I can only imagine how much more difficult that is. Ladies and gentlemen, don't come to work drunk, or get drunk at work. You might just end up in an embarrassing situation like this. Let's move on to the next one. Every job has one. I'm convinced. There's a woman at work named Cheryl, and I swear every office has a version of her. She's not openly mean enough to get in trouble, but she somehow makes the entire atmosphere heavier the second she walks into a room. You can literally hear conversations die when she appears around the corner. Cheryl acts like she's management despite not actually supervising anyone. She monitors everyone constantly. If someone comes back from a lunch a few minutes late, she'll quietly say, "Half days must be nice." If someone calls in sick, she suddenly becomes an investigator. They were fine yesterday. She also has this talent for disguising criticism as concern. She'll say things like, "You seem really tired lately. Everything okay?" in front of other coworkers, so now everyone turns to look at you like you're falling apart. The break room is the worst. Someone could be talking about a new puppy, vacation plans, or literally anything enjoyable, and Cheryl somehow redirects it into negativity within 30 seconds. Coworker, "We're going camping this weekend." Cheryl, "Hope you packed emergency supplies. My cousin got stranded once and almost lost a toe." Nobody even knows how to respond to that. She also keeps track of things that no normal person should notice. She remembers exactly how long people take on break, who leaves early, who orders takeout too often, who seems off lately. She never directly accuses anyone of anything, but she says just enough to make people uncomfortable. The strangest part is she genuinely thinks she's helpful. If there's tension in the office that she personally caused, she'll sit there saying, "I just think communication is really broken down around here." Meanwhile, everyone is actively avoiding eye contact with her. At this point, people schedule lunches around Cheryl. If someone sees her heading for the break room, They suddenly remember they have emails to finish. New employees usually try to be friendly with her at first, but within about 2 weeks, they develop the same 1,000-yard stare as the rest of us. What makes it worse is there's never a big dramatic event HR can point to. It's just years of constant small comments, judgment, negativity, and hovering until the entire office collectively feels emotionally exhausted whenever she's around. I'm not bothered enough by her to leave my long-term employment, but she really does make the work week feel exhausting. Energy vampires. That's what these people are called. And the Marine Corps is full of them. I'm sure the other branches are too. And the worst part is that they're always a higher rank than you, so there's nothing you can do about it. Their sole purpose is to create uncomfortable situations and try to catch you slipping up on something. Terrible people. I shudder at the memory. Let's move on to the next one. Coworker ate microwaved raw pork chop. I used to work security at a refinery, and one night I was working with an older lady security guard. When lunchtime came, I watched her open a raw pork chop and stick it in the microwave. It stunk up the whole office. When she pulled it out, it was pale white, and she proceeded to eat the whole thing with her hands. She had grease all around her mouth. I was so disgusted. That was 20 years ago, and I still think about it. How she didn't get sick, I'll never know. Wow. Yucky. I really wish I had read that before I started recording this, so I wouldn't have had to say all that stuff out loud. Funny story. I don't know why I remember this. During elementary school, we had this one class that we would go to after lunch, and it always smelled absolutely vile in there. I'm not sure what the teacher was cooking up in there, but I always imagined like a giant slab of bologna. And it also didn't help that she looked like what I imagined a slug would look like if it got turned into a human. But that's gonna wrap it up for today. I hope you all enjoyed, and as always, like the video if you like the video, subscribe, send it to your buddies, or don't. Later.